CBC News has learned 2 married doctors trained in South Africa have lost their medical registration here in BC.
Dr. Rosemary Cambridge and Dr. Sean Cambridge trained in South Africa, but in 2011 they were given provisional licenses to practice medicine in Chilliwack, BC.
This town has a severe doctor shortage.
As foreign-trained doctors, they then had to pass their Canadian qualifying exams.
But over 6 years, Rosemary Cambridge failed 4 times, Sean Cambridge 5.
After the repeated extensions, their registrations were finally canceled. But for patients who had no idea about any of it, the news has been a shock. For instance, Ray White, whose prescription for a heart condition was deemed invalid after his doctors lost their licenses.
I'm very concerned. When you're dealing with the heart, it's got to be, it's got to work. If it doesn't work, then you're dead.
So what now for all those patients, and how could this have happened in the first place? CBC News reporter Eric Rankin has been investigating this story. And Eric joins us in Vancouver. Let's start with the patients. What kind of a situation have these patients been left in now?
Well, Diana, as you mentioned in that setup pack there, Chilliwack has a severe shortage of doctors, and so now we've got at least 1,200 former patients of Dr. Sean and Rosemary Cambridge out there looking for replacement doctors. So this has put a strain on an already strained system. They're lining up apparently outside of walk-in clinics. Many are being told it's going to take years to find a new family doctor.
Hard to imagine their situation, but at the same time, how it could have been allowed to happen in the first place. What have you heard from others in the healthcare field about how this could have gotten so far down the road?
Well, we talked to all of the different regulatory bodies that are involved in this, and when you're a foreign-trained doctor and you come to Canada, there's lots of hoops you have to jump through. If you come from the US, the UK, Ireland, Australia, you pretty much automatically can become a doctor in Canada. But if you're foreign-trained, and a lot of them come from South Africa, you do have to pass additional exams. And there was a whole series of exams laid out that they were supposed to take. They did pass the evaluating exam to initially get their foot in the door and were thus given a practice, but they then did not pass their qualifying exam, and they kept on failing it over 6 years. For Rosemary Cambridge, he failed it 4 times. For Sean Cambridge, he failed it 5 times in 6 years. And what it appeared to be was just the College of Physicians and Surgeons in BC, which regulates doctors, just kept on trying to give them another chance. The next time they're going to pass it. But in the meantime, there were all these patients who were getting care from these doctors, and now ultimately it's been decided that they were not qualified because they could not pass the basic qualifying exam. So the regulatory bodies are just basically saying, the indication seems to be at least, that they were trying to cut them some slack. There were some mitigating circumstances, some illness in the family, and then some recounts of exam results, but ultimately the whole system failed, especially failed the patients in Chilliwack.
Very briefly, this story came to you from a tip. What would you say was the one critical piece that took it from a tip to a story that you could go to air with?
Well, it just, when you get those kind of tips, you know, that they just have that kind of ring of authenticity. And so basically very quickly making a lot of checks, starting to talk to doctors who worked in the area, trying to nail down some of the details. All of the boxes started to get ticked off. And it took us about 4 or 5 weeks to check out all the leads, but ultimately everything was mounting as we kept on looking into this.
Eric, thanks for talking about it.
You're welcome.